Well, welcome to my latest Meet the Expert series, and today I'm going to introduce to you Steve Preston. Steve is an expert in career change, in coaching people to win through redundancy, to find new opportunities, fulfilling careers and lifestyles. Now, I recently read his book. His book's called Winning Through Redundancy, 6 Steps to Navigate Your Way to a Brighter Future. And I have to say, this is one of the best books I've read on the subject, so I thought it would be a great idea to get Steve on and to do an interview. Now, before I introduce Steve, I just want to ask you a question, because you may be thinking, well, why should I listen to this interview? Well, here's a question for you to think about. How do you feel about your career? Because when you think about a career, we spend more time in our career than anything else. So if we put it on a spectrum, at one end we have it's a job, stands for just over broke, keeps roof over my head and food on the table. At the other end of the spectrum, we have, a calling or my vocation in life. So all of us are somewhere on that spectrum. But how happy are you in your career? How fulfilled are you in your career? How meaningful is your career? Because although the book talks about redundancy and what you should do after redundancy, Steve explains at the front that you can be proactive. You can make a decision to move to a more fulfilling career, and a career that enables you to express more of who you are without having to wait for a redundancy. And when you think time is our most precious resource, we don't want to be wasting time doing something that we don't love doing. So as I said, I thought it'd be a good idea to get Steve on and talk about the book and a little bit about himself. So welcome, Steve, and thanks for doing the interview.
Thanks, Colin. Looking forward to it.
So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself? Because on the front, under your name, it says, is a career catalyst. So what is a career catalyst?
Right. Well, thanks, Colin. Yeah, I'll just share the story behind that quickly. Having been doing this sort of work now for over 10 years, I sort of graduated or gravitated to really specialising in helping people change careers, and especially through redundancy, as you say, Colin, because that tends to be a much harder emotional wrench for people. But the whole career change process is actually a total emotional roller coaster, which I'm sure we'll come back to later. And when I was actually looking to brand myself, when I was writing the book, and more so aside of my business in my own right as an author, I went to a number of my clients and said, well, how would you describe what I do? And it was fascinating because, like I write in the book, it's so much easier to see things in other people than it is in yourself. And I got all sorts of responses back because I had thoughts about being the career doctor, the career architect, and all sorts of terms like that. But I found that aside of some of those domains were already trademarked, also that people kept talking about I was the catalyst for change. I thought, yeah, you know what, I like that. So I soundposted various different people with the thought of career catalyst and what they thought about it, and unanimously to the person, everybody came back and said, that's exactly what you do, Steve. So I very quickly trademarked it to make sure I got that under my belt and nobody could to grab it. But it just encapsulates the fact that I act as the catalyst for people's change, for their transition, because it is a difficult process, and as many people find out to their cost, it's extremely difficult to go it alone. And so working with a career coach such as myself, and somebody who's been through that journey themselves as well, who really empathises and understands it, then I can really dig deep and delve to help people really think differently and challenge them so they can successfully make that change.
And you were made redundant in 2001, right? After a career in was it a 30-year career in travel industry?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so you're an example of what you talk about in the book, because you've really reinvented what you now do. So Talk us through a little bit about that. What was that like?
Well, it was interesting, Colin, because initially I was rubbing my hands together, thinking, you know what, I can. This is my exit clause, and I can walk away here with a nice little package. However, as I found to my cost, and I wrote in the book, even if you choose to take redundancy, and my wife did the same a few years later, you still go through these same roller coaster of emotions, maybe for slightly different reasons. But as soon as you start to lose that work ethos and the confidence and the self-esteem, then you start to doubt yourself, and then that self-belief suddenly disappears. So I by my own admission, I was lost for a good 9 months or so. And then I went on a program for unemployed professionals and executives, where I suddenly started to see the wood for the trees, and I realised that career and personal development could be something that I'd really take to, and I became absolutely passionate about it. And I suppose by accident rather than design, or it depends what you believe in, the law of attraction, as I write a lot out of the book, as a result of being on that course and really sort of resonating with the work that was done, I thought, well, you know, this is something I can do. This could be my future career. And I ended up doing work for that consultancy, and then over a short period of time becoming their lead trainer and career coach, and helping them rewrite their whole career development program. Of course, at that point, I'm suddenly thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm doing this for another consultancy. You know, I should really be doing this under my own brand. And it sort of went from there. But yes, I really was lost, having had 30 really good years in the travel industry, although I did lots of different things. And of course, that was the other realisation, Colin, that over that 30-year career, the last 12, 15 years or so, I could have been in any sector, any industry, because I'd worked in sales, operations, project management, HR, you name it. And it's only when you come out of that environment and start to see things from a different perspective that you realise that, you know, there is a life after whatever you've done before, even though a lot of people don't necessarily realise it. But it is a difficult journey for most people, and many people do get lost in that career transition maze, as I'll talk about.
Well, that might lead us on to the next question then. So what was your motivation or inspiration for writing this book?
Yeah, great question, Colin. I suppose the main inspiration was to make a difference and really help others who are stuck in that same situation, whether as a result of redundancy or also the awful stuck in a career rut, going nowhere, totally frustrated, and on a downhill slide, if you like. But having seen so many of my colleagues who I work with relate so badly to what happened to them, and I realised that everyone relates differently to redundancy. Even though I chose to take it, and I was offered the opportunity to move up north and live like a king, as it was put to me, I thought, well, you know what, I don't want to be beholden to any employer, and I don't want people taking control of my career. I need to take control of my own career and my life, and become what I call the architect of my own future. So the key inspiration behind the book was to help other people in those situations to realise that there is a definite way to tackle career transition, and there is a definite process, which is why I developed my 6-step career navigation cycle process, to simplify things, if you like, to help people through that very difficult career transition journey and maze.
And I mean, I have my own views on this, but what would you say, in your opinion, how does this differ, your book differ from other books out there that are writing on redundancy or career transition?
Well, there's obviously I'm biased, but there's a massive difference. And again, I suppose that was another motivation. So it's a good question, Colin. I wanted to write a different sort of book. There are loads of books out there that talk about job search, CVs, interview skills, and all this sort of stuff, which are all important. But I wanted to write a book which really inspired people, to help them realise that, you know what, it's not necessarily about another job. It really is about finding work that you love. And work that you love may not be another job. It could be self-employment, it could be a portfolio career, which is interesting that so many people now I come across still don't understand that term. And I was running a seminar last week about all this stuff, and apart from my two clients who were in the room, not one other person had heard of the term, the portfolio career.
Wow.
So if you like, it would take the lid off to help people to challenge their perceptions and to really give them a new perspective, to make them realise that basically anything is possible with the right process, the commitment, the self-belief, confidence, and of course taking the right positive actions. And that's been proven time and time again.
Very good. And what would you say are the sort of common mistakes that people make? One, when they've been made redundant, and secondly, if they are thinking about the whole subject of career transition. They may not call it that. They may say, I want to do something else, or I want a new job, or I want a new career. But what would you say are the mistakes, the typical mistakes? Maybe share three typical mistakes that you see people making.
Yeah, well, there's some very obvious ones, Colin. And the first one is the classic scattergun. Yeah. And I've written lots of articles about this even before the book. People's immediate first reaction once they've been told about redundancy, or there's even the threat of redundancy, or even if they are thinking about changing career, first thing they do is fire off their CV into cyberspace. It's untargeted, it's unfocused, they have little clarity about what they really want to achieve, and it really doesn't sell themselves in the best possible light, because they haven't done the key work that sits behind all that, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. So that's point one. Point two, especially if it's redundancy, is panic. I'm not suggesting that people should, but more the point that people go into panic mode. Oh my God, how am I going to survive? How will I find another job? What will my husband, wife, partner, whatever, say? And how do I tell my friends? It's this embarrassment factor, if you like, which, in today's modern world of working, redundancy, unfortunately, is a fact of life. So it's getting out of that panic mindset, and actually realising it's an opportunity rather than a threat. And for many people, it's the first time in their life where they can actually take a step back, take stock, reflect, and actually start to think about what they really want to do, as opposed to maybe what they fell into, which is what happens to so many people, that they fall into a career. And the other key mistake is the lack of belief. Again, I saw this last week at the seminar I was running, where questions came forward. People really find it difficult to believe they can make a change, they can make that transition. How am I going to do this? I've only ever known one thing or a couple of things, so how can I possibly make that transition? So having that belief and following the process, the 6-step process I've developed, will really give people the confidence to help them through, and to realise that, you know what, I can do this. So I suppose those are the three key, the three biggies, if you like. And there's one other which maybe I'll just share with you, Colin, because it is important, and I find this the most frustrating of the lot, is that people do all the hard work, they go through all the the 5 stages of the process, if you like, it gets to the final stage, which is taking positive action, and then all of a sudden they think, "Oh my God, this is a bit scary," and then they retreat back into their comfort zone, which is exactly what they wanted to get out of, and they wanted to do something different, and they just go back to exactly where they were before, and then they spend the rest of their life thinking, "What if?" And that, to me, is absolutely senseless.
Yep.
But it's all back to the belief.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. And what I like about the book is this career navigation cycle that you've got, these steps. So I think those steps really help with the belief, because if you do step 1, step 2, step 3, it is shifting your belief, it's shifting your confidence, it's shifting that seeing the world differently in a different perspective. I mean, I thought chapter 5 was really, really good, and deciding what to do, and you lay all the things that you can do out in that chapter, and when you read all of that you realise there's so many opportunities, there's so many possibilities, and this portfolio idea. I mean, I now have a portfolio career. That's what I do. I don't derive an income from one source, I derive it from many sources, and for me it's far more fulfilling. But as you say, so many people don't know about it, don't understand it, they haven't even thought about it. And I think your book does or those stages, or that navigation cycle does a brilliant job. Where did the idea of that come from, by the way?
Well, firstly, thank you, Colin. Appreciate that. And well, the cycle came as a result of, I suppose, constant frustration that was sort of eating away at me. I'd worked with hundreds of clients by this time, sort of a few years into doing career development work. And I don't know, I just had this sort of light bulb moment one day, a classic aha moment, and I'm thinking, what is it that makes the difference? Why some people are successful in going through a career transition, regardless of whether it's through redundancy or not, even people who are progressing their careers. Why is it that some people are successful and they go through it reasonably easy and other people don't? So what I started to do, I started to map common themes that I noticed from different clients I worked with. I related it back to my own career transition journey, and also friends and contacts I knew, in the big wide world who'd made their own different career transitions. And what I found, I have to say, much to my surprise, Colin, was that, you know what, it's not rocket science. There is a process, and it does work. So there's a definite process to make a successful career transition for whatever reason it is. And then I started mapping out those common themes as to what they were, and that's how I arrived at the 6 steps. And it's interesting because in a recent book review only the other week from the Charter Management Institute, the reviewer highlights the fact that he loves the simplicity of the book and the 6 steps of the cycle. But of course, and that's wonderful, and that's what I aim to achieve. However, the reality is the work that people need to do that sits behind it, of course, is not that simple. And people do have to, they have to realise it's not just about investment in cost, maybe, with a career coach, but it's in time and effort and energy, because it is an emotional roller coaster. But that's really how it all sort of came to be. And I always say that the only people who fail are those who don't follow through with the process, because otherwise there's nothing to stop you. The only person that stops you being successful is you, which is like most things in life. And as you say, the whole process starts with that shifting of mindset. It doesn't matter whether it's redundancy or just moving on to something else because you're fed up and want to get out. And it's all about that mindset and that new perspective, as you say, which is why I developed the acronym in the book for perspective, which is interesting that so many people have made comment on.
Very well. what I like is the first 3 steps are really about going inward and developing or understanding yourself better. Because I think in order to make any transition a better transition, you've got to start by understanding yourself better, and then it shifts outward to understand the external world better. And then when you pull those two together, ultimately it ends up in each and every one of us making better decisions. So I think it's a really well balanced model, and it makes real sense. But as you rightly say, the rubber hits the road when you do the work, and you've got lots and lots of exercises in there. So you are making it as easy as possible for people just to basically pull out a pen and fill in your templates, which I think is, is about as good as it can possibly get.
Yeah, thank you. And just going back to what you said there with the inner and outer self, it was fascinating because when I started writing the book, I engaged the services of a writer coach who was recommended to me. And never having worked with such people before, it was interesting because within minutes of her understanding the concept that sits behind the book and showing her the 6-step cycle, she was the first person who said to me, "You know what, Steve, do you realise that this cycle actually is in 2 halves, like you say, Colin?" And she said the first half of the cycle is all personal development work, as to get greater self-awareness, and it's all about the inner self. And the second half of the cycle then shifts into, from exploring opportunities, it's really the much more typical career development work, and how you then get a job or set up your own business and move into that, which is the outer self stuff. And she did me a massive favour by picking up on that, because I hadn't looked at it in that way previously. And it actually then helped shape the whole thinking behind the book. And I would actually say it's made me an infinitely better coach as a result of it, because it's really getting into the psyche of the person.
Now, we talked about this, but let's pick this up now. Portfolio careers. What's attractive, because you write about it in the book, but what's attractive to you about that and attractive to other people about portfolio careers? And maybe even share a little bit about what it is from your point of view.
Well, I will answer that, Colin, with an amazing quote, which every time I mention it, the hairs on my neck stand up. And it's from the brilliant business guru, Peter Drucker, who I'm sure you're aware of. And this is way back, I believe, back in the 80s or early 90s. And he said that corporations, once built to last like pyramids, are more like tents. So why would you want to design your life around a temporary structure? And when I heard that, I thought, wow, that is amazing. And then I heard all about all the fantastic work Charles Handy had done around the world of work, and his book, an amazing book, I think 1988, The Age of Unreason, and all this sort of upside down thinking about the world of work. And he was saying even back then, although I didn't come across this until my transition in early 2000s, that work would change. People would work in smaller offices, they'd work remotely, technology would take over, people would start to do a collective of things, and that they could potentially derive income from a number of different sources. And people would look more lifestyle focused, so it wouldn't just be about work, it would be about helping others in terms of maybe voluntary work, and then look at the whole lifestyle aspect as part of this portfolio, this collective of things they do. But this thought of deriving income from different strands of passions, interests, talents and skills and so on, boy oh boy, did that open my world of thinking. And I thought, you know what, I rather like this, and always being one to challenge convention, I thought, yeah, well, why go back to looking for another job again? Why go back to traditional employment? This type of mindset and lifestyle surely is the way to go. And I've embraced it ever since. I only touch on it really in the book, and my next book is going to be all about that concept. And I run a lot of seminars around that as well. But as I mentioned earlier, incredibly sort of 20, 30 years on from when these guys first started talking about it, there's still a blissful lack of ignorance around the whole concept, which makes it even more exciting to share with other people to get them to embrace it.
Yes. Yeah, well, for me, when my family and I took that year out in Fuerteventura, and when we came back from that was the realization that I had, that actually I want to put lifestyle in the center and I want to build a career around it. Whereas pre taking the year out, I had career in the center and lifestyle around the outside, squeezed around the outside. And
well, that is very common, Colin. In fact, the other thing which I'd just point out, back to common mistakes, which links to what you've just said. One of the biggest mistakes of all, which is so obvious I forgot it, is people rushing to take the first job that comes along. And that's part of the panic syndrome, if you like. But I've seen it so many times, and I always say, and again I've written it in the book, it's always like buses, and it's not just one job offer. Invariably there's 2 or 3 that come along, and often by taking the first offer that comes along, it's often not the right thing to do. And of course, by the time people have done their re-evaluation, they may actually be thinking, well, actually, you know what, I don't want another job anymore. In which case, why put themselves through that awful job search and interview process and all the stress and everything that goes with it?
No, well, I've seen it like yourself for sure, and it is that panic. It's a decision made, and it's the wrong decision, and then you have regret again. And then you're back in the same situation. You regret making the decision. So, yeah. Now, I know you're going to give the listener of this a download, which will be below this video, and it's six top steps to navigate your way to a brighter future, which gives them more information and gives them your top tips. Where else can the listener go to get more information? What's your website address, Steve?
Well, my Career Catalyst website, which is probably the best point, is www.steveprestonthecareercatalyst.com. Bit of a mouthful. And that basically showcases the range of products and coaching services and masterclasses that I offer in my own right as Steve Preston. They can also contact me if they're into tweeting and so on. My Twitter handle is at Steve M. Preston. And I've also got a Facebook page as well at Steve Preston, the Career Catalyst, off the top of my head. I also have a company website, so it depends on what angle they're coming from, which is www.smp-solutions.co.uk, and that covers the whole spectrum of service offering to businesses as well as individuals, but it doesn't cover the specific personal products that I offer, such as the book and audio books and online programs and things like that. That's on the Career Catalyst site.
Very good. And I'll put the link below the video for Amazon to go and get the book. And this is, this is the book I'm going to be recommending to my clients that are thinking about career and different career, or they've been made redundant. So I think it's a fabulous book. Now, one last question before we wrap this up then. So, what's becoming clearer to you?
In what respect?
As big as you want. Life, work?
You mean as having written the book, or in general?
If you want, yep. So it's just a very, very open question. It's the question that I always ask those that I interview right at the very end. So what's becoming clearer to you? It's as open. You can take it in any direction you want to take it in.
My word, that's a very powerful question, Colin. I like that. Well, I suppose what's becoming clearer to me is exactly what I covered at the seminar the other day, because this comes up time and time again, is that so much of what we achieve in life, not just career, is all about our mindset. And it doesn't matter what your ambitions are, how big or small they are, both in terms of your work or your life in general, unless you have that positive mindset and you have that belief that you can achieve it, then nothing much is going to happen. And I always ask people to share what their vision of success is, and you may recall there's an exercise around that in the book. And it's fascinating because, having done this for many years now, I would say at least 80% of people never talk about money and wealth. It's rarely about the material things. It's much more about what fulfills them, and things that they want to embrace, such as a happy family and good relationships. And as somebody said the other day at the seminar, earning enough to do what they want to and live a life in the way they want. And I think that's something, you know, in terms of answering your question, Colin, because it's a big question. I think it's this being able to live the life you want in the way you want by earning enough. And earning enough is different for everybody. For some people, they may have massive overheads, but for other people, it's actually not much at all, in which case it really gives them massive scope and opportunity to think very differently about what they do and how they lead their life.
Very good, yes. So, well, I'd like to thank you for giving your time today, Steve, and also for the download that's below the video, because having read through that, there's some fantastic information in there. So, the listener, you can download that and you can get that right now. Also, click through to Steve's websites, have a look at what else he offers, because there's a whole load of resources there for you. But also, I do recommend, get the book. It's a fantastic book. It's one that's definitely worthy of being in a library. And even if redundancy is not on your mind at this time, be proactive, think through, do the work, as Steve says, to figure out, well, what am I on this planet doing? What do I really want to do that's fulfilling, and spend that time wisely. So, Steve, thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.